Have you ever wondered why price controls are so popular amongst politicians and common people, but not really so much for economists? Well, today we're going to be going over exactly why economists hate price controls, for the most part. Looking at rent control, the first thing that we need to do is take a look at our standard supply and demand graph. And in order to analyze the costs and benefits of these policies, we need to think about consumer and producer welfare. In economics, we call it producer surplus, consumer surplus. So let's start with consumer surplus. If you look at the demand curve, think about what it's actually telling you. It's saying for a given price, how much quantity will be demanded. So at a certain rent level, how many people will want apartments? And we can think of you wanting an apartment based on how much value or how much benefit it gives to you. So when you think about this, there's maybe a person who values an apartment, let's say at $800 per month. And think about it, if the rent they have to pay is only, let's say, $400 a month, then they're getting some surplus, some value for free. Because if they valued it at 800 and they only had to pay 400, obviously they're getting $400 for free. And so everything that's above the price and below the demand curve is this extra value, which we call consumer surplus. And on the flip side, we can do the same thing for producers. Or in this case, it would be the landlords. So if someone would be willing to rent out their apartment for, say, $200 a month, but they actually get $400, they're getting this surplus of $200. Now, the next thing that we can do is we can tap on the price ceiling button to see what happens. So let's say that the market price, for example, would have been $400, but instead now we decide to make a price ceiling of $200. Well, that is, if you really think about it, if we go out to the quantity supplied, we can see that that's going to decline because less people will want to supply apartments at that low price. And the quantity demanded will increase because there are a lot of people who for $400 wouldn't have rented an apartment, but for $200, yeah, they want it. And what does that create? A shortage. In addition, it's going to create deadweight loss. Deadweight loss is this red area that you'll see. And it represents these surpluses, both the producer and the consumer surplus that would have been had in a free market, but now because we have less apartments available, that's all gone. That's all waste. And then finally, what we can do is we can see what happens if demand gets more inelastic. More inelastic demand just means that people are less sensitive to price changes. Like, you still need a place to live, right? So it's probably fairly reasonable to assume that the demand for apartments is going to be pretty inelastic. Now, what happens when we do this price ceiling with inelastic demand? As you can see, it ends up being not very good for consumers. Consumers are losing a whole lot of surplus. And in the end, this really goes to show that, yes, there will be some winners, right? The people who will still be able to have apartments are going to be taking some of the producer surplus. But for everybody else, it's not good. It's not great. So that's the explanation for why economists and educated people, for the most part, agree that price ceilings and rent control, for example, are bad ideas.